Good morning, everybody. My name's John Crystal. I think most of you know me. I'm the chair of the Department of Psychiatry here at Yale. And today you're going to participate in something that I think is going to be one of the most memorable and historic moments for our department. I particularly want to thank Cindy Crusto and all the people that are mentioned in this pamphlet. I'm not going to mention everybody but by name. But both the activity that you're going to participate in today and the process of the whole series of events that are going to unfold this year are a recognition both of the enormous contribution of women to the Department of Psychiatry and, in fact, to this medical school and university and field, but also to acknowledge this moment as a special time of opportunity and change, as the values, the baggage that we have carried along with us in our field, the bias, the constraints and opportunity that have hurt the entire field but have been particularly felt by women are getting addressed. And so I'm really thrilled that today we get to kick off this year of celebration with this very special symposium that we're going to have today. I want to also mention, before handing over the podium to Cindy, who will chair the event today, I want to mention some upcoming events. Next week, on the 14th, Flavio Froelich, who is a really innovative neuroscientist at the University of North Carolina, will be talking about the efforts that are growing to record the activity of the brain with EEG, and then to use those EEG signals as to guide neurostimulation treatment of psychiatric disorders. So you may have seen Star Trek, where they had a little device. They would put this on your head, and they would say, "Oh, yeah, he's a little anxious," and then they would then push a button and stimulate the brain to fix whatever the little device said was the matter. Well, this is the kind of work that Dr. Froelich will be talking about in his grand rounds. The following week, our speaker will be Monica Williams from UConn, who will be talking about racial trauma. And I think one of the issues of the celebration of women's contributions is that it brings into relief all the different ways in which people have been disadvantaged as they've tried to pursue careers or get treatment in the mental health area. And so I'm particularly pleased that we'll have the opportunity to talk about racial trauma in 2 weeks in the department. So without further ado, it's my enormous pleasure to introduce the chair of the symposium today to introduce the morning's festivities. Cindy.
So thank you, John, for the introduction, and good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here for this important celebration. After several months of planning, I actually can't believe that this day is finally here. This celebration stems from a larger event held this past June commemorating the 100-year anniversary of women at Yale School of Medicine. It was sponsored by the Committee on the Status of Women, known as SWIM, the Minority Organization for Retention and Expansion, known as MORE, and the Dean's Office. SWIM asked that each department hold its own celebration. And I want to thank Dr. Crystal for suggesting that we celebrate women in our department this entire academic year. I took him seriously, and with the help of many people in the room, we have an amazing schedule of events planned so far, which you can find on the back of your program. Through these events, we have tried to address concerns that you all have raised, such as gender-based microaggressions. What are they? What do we do about them? A lack of mentoring for junior women, and issues related to being an underrepresented racial or ethnic minority in academic medicine and in our department. There are other events being planned, but if you have ideas, please don't hesitate to contact me. So what is it that we want people to come away with as a result of today's Grand Rounds? First, this is designed to celebrate women in our department. Quite simply, we celebrate that which is important. Second, it's important to highlight a diversity of women in the department. While today's Grand Rounds is focused on ladder track faculty, we did our best to assemble a diverse group of women with respect to social identity, rank, track, and area of professional interest. But I know from your phone calls, your letters, emails, and conversations that we didn't address all dimensions of diversity. This was a concern of the planning committee from the very beginning. We decided to celebrate more women through the departmental monthly newsletter. We will feature one person a month, and they will reflect on their experiences as women in the department. So far, these are the people who have agreed to be featured, and you may be tapped to actually participate as well. Third, my goal is to increase your ability to walk in someone else's shoes. Learn about someone else's experience, regardless of your background. Ask yourself, what can I/we do differently or better to address the experiences of women in the department? I often hear from people in other School of Medicine departments that our department is light years ahead of theirs in terms of women's presence and experience. I believe this is based largely on the relative equal number of female and male faculty in our department. So I decided to look at the data a little bit. This first slide shows gender by academic rank. You can see at the assistant and associate professor rank, there are more women than men, but at the full professor rank, there are more than 2 times as many men as women, 69% men compared to 31% women. This second slide takes a closer look at full professors in the last 10 years, where you could argue that women have made progress. Of the 30 people promoted to full professor in the last 10 years, 63% are men and 37% of women, and 90% self-identify as white. This third slide presents data from the last 7 years, where you could say we've even made more progress. And we see the same pattern. More men than women were promoted during this time period. And the same pretty much for the last 5 years. This fifth slide presents race and ethnicity data by academic rank, so not just full professors, but all of the ranks. The total column tells the story. 76% of those on ladder track are white, 11 are Asian, 7% African American, 3% Latino or Hispanic, and other groups are not even represented on this table. These data indicate that we have a ways to go with respect to gender, race, ethnicity, and a lot of other dimensions of diversity. I want to caution us that even though we may have more women in our department than other departments, and that for many of us, all that we do to address mental health and well-being, women in our department and affiliated institutions still face harassment, microaggressions, microinvalidations, discrimination, lack of leadership opportunities, and a lack of mentoring. And these are things that people routinely report on to us. So can the stories you hear today help us understand the experiences of women and move us from understanding to action? Maybe it's a conversation with someone you supervise or a coworker. You could simply ask, what did you think of Grand Rounds today? Did it resonate with you? In what ways is your experience similar or different? At the very least, people want to feel heard and supported. Maybe the women you hear from today can help you think more systemically about your setting to address these experiences. Where can you/we enact change? Fourth, maybe you can find inspiration in the stories you hear today. There's a great quote by Maya Angelou, which is here. The thing to do, it seems to me, is to prepare yourself so that you can be a rainbow in somebody else's cloud. Somebody who may not look like you, may not call God the same name you call God if they call God at all. I may not dance your dances or speak your language, but be a blessing to somebody. That's what I think. We have an amazing group of women that we'll hear from today, and I hope you find some inspiration in their stories. We hope you stay for lunch immediately following today's program to talk with them and others. Today could not be possible with a lot of people, and I want to be sure to thank them. First, I want to thank John Crystal again, who suggested that we celebrate the entire year. And I also want to thank all of those who have worked on the events listed on the program. And here's a long list of people who really made today possible, as well as the other events that are listed on your program. I want to thank all of you who showed so much enthusiasm for this celebration and raised concerns when we weren't quite getting it right. You helped it make it a much better celebration. And I know we couldn't include everyone. There are so many important women in our department. But we will continue to find ways to honor your accomplishments and involve you in the events and programming this year. I want to definitely thank the panelists, and I know the pros and cons of sharing your stories and experiences in a setting like this, so I really appreciate your willingness to be here today. And just to note that we're going to also reinvigorate the mentoring lunches and meetings that we've had with women across the department. So this is a big issue that people have talked about, and so we want to continue on with that. So now I'm going to introduce and simultaneously thank the next person on the program, and that is Dr. Carolyn Missouri, who is the Norma Weinberg Spungen and Joan Liebson Bleidner Professor in Women's Health Research and Professor of Psychiatry and Psychology. In addition to the research and clinical education contributions she has made during her career, she has had a key role in wide-ranging experience in facilitating faculty careers, ensuring a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. These roles and experiences include, for example, the Associate Dean for Faculty at the Yale School of Medicine for 12 years, an ongoing member of the NIH Office for Research on Women's Health Advisory Board, a consultant to the American College of Radiology, the Women's Health Advisory Group of the American Association of Orthopedic Surgeons, and as a member of the Advisory Board of the International Journal of Women's Dermatology. Carolyn also was an initial member of the Executive Committee of the Women Faculty Forum, or WFF, at Yale, established in 2001 to highlight the importance of women faculty at the university and to foster gender equity through policy initiatives, research, and innovative programs. She also is an ongoing and long-standing member of the Executive Committee of the Medical Schools Committee on the Status of Women, or SWIM, which was founded in 1975 by Dean Robert Berliner to provide ongoing evaluation of the status of women in the School of Medicine. In addition, she was an early supporter and continues to be an ardent advocate of MORE, the Minority Organization for Retention and Expansion. I have asked her today to comment on opportunities and challenges for women in academic life.
Good morning. Thank you. I appreciate Dr. Christos asking me to comment today, and I'd like to start by, first of all, thanking her for generating the idea of this Grand Rounds and for all the work and the efforts she so thoughtfully put into the event to organize this and to bring us together. So there's much to say about the topic of opportunities and challenges for all faculty in academic health centers. In the interest of time, what I plan to do is briefly list some of the opportunities that, in my view, we as faculty have potentially available to us. I will spend my remaining minutes addressing challenges that can thwart our availing ourselves of these opportunities And in this regard, I will specifically focus on women. So first, what are some of the opportunities we have as faculty members? We have the opportunity to continually learn from colleagues, mentors, and students. Share knowledge with others, in particular, teach the next generation of clinicians and researchers and educators. Help people struggling with illnesses and adverse conditions, both acute and chronic. Conduct exciting research that results in positive benefit and increased well-being. Build and administer programs and centers of various types that influence the course of an important department or even of an institutional that's world-renowned. And finally, I would think the other very important aspect of our opportunities is that we have the opportunity to expand meaningful relationships over a lifetime as a function of the contributions that we make academically. These salient features of academic life sound good to me. They sound like pursuits that bring out the best in us and describe a career that I would want. So what are the challenges of having a fulfilling faculty career? And more importantly, to the point of today's Grand Rounds and our subsequent panel, why focus on women? Don't challenges exist for all faculty? The answer to this question, quite simply, is yes. Challenges clearly exist for all faculty. But what brings us here today is that despite both women and men wanting to take advantage of the opportunities that I have mentioned and have successful academic careers, overall, the weight of the challenges is greater for women than men, and for minority versus non-minority persons. We know this because we are guided by empirical research data, consensus reports from the American College of Physicians, impaneled committees of the IOM, the Institute of Medicine, now called the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, which also has released recent reports, and multiple reports provided by faculty committees and task forces, including those convened here at Yale, both by the university and by the medical school, as well as our own personal experiences. Again, in the brief time available, I will focus on only a few examples of the kinds of challenges greater for women in three broad areas. First, getting hired. Second, once hired. And third, the daily experience of faculty life. So first, challenges in getting hired. As Carnes and colleagues point out in their work published in Academic Medicine, one crucial juncture at which we can realize the diversity goals of academic health centers is in hiring new faculty. However, search committees do not, as a rule, actively recruit women and minorities into the pool of faculty applicants, and empirical investigations of hiring practices have demonstrated that women are evaluated more critically than men when applying for academic positions. Moreover, and very importantly, these patterns begin within the so-called career pipeline. For example, in a study published in Nature of actual peer-reviewed ratings of 114 women and men applying for postdoctoral fellowships, women received lower scores on methodological capability, research relevance, and scientific competence. The investigators then looked at the issue of scientific competence, and when scientific competence ratings were compared to the impact of each applicant's scientific productivity, which they assessed in 6 different ways, such as measures of original publications, first author publications, time cited, it was found that for the same level of scientific productivity as men, female applicants received lower scientific competency scores. Similarly, in a 2012 PNAS article, Professor Joe Handelsman, a Howard Hughes professor who had been here at Yale in the Department of Molecular, Cellular, and Developmental Biology, then went on to become Associate Director for Science at the White House for President Obama, demonstrated that the pipeline is similarly affected as undergraduate students are preparing to enter the scientific workforce. Using a randomized double-blind study design, Handelsman and her colleagues compared evaluations for a laboratory manager position of a promising science student. Using the identical application assigned either a female or male name, the female student was less likely to be hired, was judged as less competent, and if hired would be offered a lower starting salary and less mentoring. Pre-existing subtle bias, or what we've come to know as implicit bias against women, as measured by Handelsman and her colleagues, moderated the finding of less support for the female student, suggesting that measured implicit bias strengthens the baseline sociocultural values that often impute lesser competence to women. Challenge is greater for women once we're hired. Despite the hurdles in getting hired, the number and percentages of women in academic medicine has increased. Nonetheless, the rates of promotion to professor remain painfully low, and Cindy was good enough to show us some data on that today. According to the most recent 2015 AAMC report entitled The State of Women in Academic Medicine, quote, women make up 39% of the full-time faculty, but only 13% of women are full professors compared to 28% of men. So these data are pretty comparable to what we're seeing in our own department, and certainly comparable to what we're seeing throughout the School of Medicine. Furthermore, only 16% of department chairs and 16% of medical school deans are women. As a 2016 academic medicine article pointed out, quote, these numbers have increased only marginally over a decade, and the pace of change is not on track to meet recommended targets. Reinforcing this finding, a 2015 JAMA study found that the proportion of women at the rank of professor in U.S. medical schools has not significantly increased since 1980. This remained true in this paper's analysis of a national sample of over 90,000 faculty after accounting for age, experience, specialty, and measures of research productivity, such as publications and NIH funding. Publications. As we all know, publications are an essential factor in evaluating a faculty member for promotion. And it has been more difficult for women to have manuscripts accepted for publication. A 2017 Nature editorial entitled Slow Progress, the Gender Imbalance in Scientific Publishing is Still Pervasive. This editorial, to its great credit, stated, quote, in 2012, this journal admitted to its gender bias. And in its recent self-review, the journal admits that it must, in their words, quote, try harder, and will continue to track reviewers and authors. NIH grants. Interestingly, a 2016 study in academic medicine of a longitudinal cohort of faculty from 24 medical schools in the United States indicated that despite lower rates of publications for women than men, no gender differences were found in the number of federal grants as PIs. However, these authors did not focus on grant type, and some studies suggest that women are as likely to obtain K awards, but not as likely to obtain RO1s. In support of these latter studies, a 2017 study found that women were less successful in renewing RO1s than men. These authors found that, quote, applications from men received significantly better priority, approach, and significance scores which could not be accounted for by differences in productivity, reminiscent of the study that I mentioned earlier with regard to postdoc applicants. Compensation. Multiple studies analyzing faculty salaries over time have shown consistent gender differences, with women being paid less than men. And importantly, multiple studies, and there are multiple studies in this area, show that inequities often attributed to salary determinants such as part-time status, taking time away from work due to family obligations, productivity levels, and work distribution among administrative, teaching, and research and clinical service, that these determinants, potential determinants of salary, when they're taken into account, this does not close the gap in salary that's found. In our own experience here at the Yale School of Medicine, overall salaries remain lower for women than men over many years of careful analysis, despite taking these and many other variables into consideration. Drawing from one example of the extensive literature on this topic, a 17-year follow-up of a 1995 faculty salary survey showed, on average, 10% lower salary for women that persists over time. Certainly, a 10% difference and above amounts to a large amount of money. Yet even a small percentage, when considering salary over years and matching funds from the university based on one's salary, is a lot of money to a lot of people. And this is something we certainly encounter here at Yale Med School. Challenge is greater for women in the third area that I will mention briefly, the climate in academic life. I'm sure that everyone in the room understands that we could have a full day of discussions on climate. The so-called climate or work environment is defined as a reflection of an organization's structures, policies, and practices, but also the demographics of its membership, the attitudes and values of its members and of its leaders, and the quality of interpersonal interactions. The climate, then, engenders all the issues that I've mentioned and many more, including other serious challenges to which women are more likely to be subjected, such as the stress of work-life balance, retaliation for asking for what one deserves, and even sexual harassment. Climate is a vital measure of whether there is respect and appreciation, and whether there is a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in one's work. Many studies find that female faculty, along with women in every other area of work that has been studied, experience adverse workplace climates at greater rates than men. This topic is large, important, and complex, but it is understandable. Social context influences the quality of work experience. So, wishing to end on a positive note, climate can be changed, and data indicate that changing the climate provides a great opportunity to change course and provide a greater and more productive work experience for all faculty. I believe this institution has the capability to do that, and I would encourage us all to participate actively in seeing that that occurs. Thank you. Thank you. And now we're very privileged to have Dr. Jean Steiner, who's going to lead the panel, and she will introduce the wonderful panelists here today. Thank you.
Thank you. But we're going to pretend that you're at the Longworth Theater for about 30 seconds. We have a crew. All in one crew. We're going to do something, and then we're going to invite the panel to sit at the table.
Yeah. I'm good. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And we'll have the house lights on now?
No.
No, leave them the way they are?
Yep.
There we go. Now they have a little more room, they don't,
Is this on?
this one.
This one. Right in the middle. Okay. Thank you, all. It is my great pleasure to introduce our panelists who have graciously agreed to share their personal narratives with us. These impressive women are in different phases of their academic careers, have taken varying pathways on that journey, and undoubtedly will present unique perspectives. In the interest of time, I'll give very brief introductions and then share what issues we've asked each of them to touch upon. You can read their full bios in one of the handouts. And we've also provided a separate handout that summarizes the different academic tracks in the medical school. If anyone has questions about the panelists' specific academic track or pathway, please feel free to ask that in the Q&A part of the program or during the reception following grand rounds. And just to reiterate Dr. Crusto's invitation, everyone here is welcome and encouraged to come upstairs to W212 for a lunch reception. The panelists, in alphabetical order, are Miriam Delphin-Rittman, Associate Professor of Psychiatry and Commissioner of the Connecticut Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, Esperanza Diaz, Associate Professor of Psychiatry and Medical Director of the Hispanic Clinic at CMHC and the Latino Behavioral Health System, Ayana Jordan, Assistant Professor of Psychiatry and Director of the Yale Global Health Program, Suchitra Krishnan Saran, Professor of Psychiatry and Co-Director of the Tobacco Center of Regulatory Science, and Kim Yonkers, Professor of Psychiatry, of Epidemiology, and of Obstetrics, Gynecology, and Reproductive Sciences, Director of the Center for Wellbeing of Women and Mothers, and Division Director for the Yale Psychological Medicine Service. The panelists were asked to tell us about their experiences in the department and what challenges and opportunities they've encountered as women. We've also asked them to share a bit about their personal life, some lessons learned, and what advice they would give to women now. Each one will speak for only 10 minutes, but we've reserved time for follow-up questions from the audience. Jessica Isom and Natalie Lastra, this year's Diversity Chief Residents, will moderate the discussion with me. Before we start the presentations, Natalie will explain the process for submitting handwritten questions for the Q&A, and Jessica will explain the online process.
Good morning, everyone. So you'll notice in your programs that there are these cards if you open it up, and it has the URL if you would like to submit the electronic questions, but you can write your question just there on the front and then pass it towards the center. There are also microphones available if you'd like to ask your question. And we do ask that if it is directed to a particular panelist, if you just include the panelist's name.
And we'll make an effort to rotate from online to general questions from the audience to the written questions.
Okay. We will now start with the commissioner and then each one in turn. Oh, there are now seats up front that our panelists have said you may vacate it, so you may, if someone wants to come up and take a seat, feel free to do so. Commissioner.
So come on up, don't be shy. So I'll just wait while everyone gets situated. So good morning, everyone. Good morning. You know, I first want to say thank you to Dr. Crystal for agreeing that or certainly supporting the idea of celebrating women all year long. I think that that's an important and wonderful thing and a great opportunity for the department to be able to celebrate women. Also want to thank Cindy for coordinating us and helping to put together this panel. We had a phone call to sort of prepare and think about some of our initial ideas together, and so thanks for that opportunity, Cindy, and for your leadership in this effort. I have to say that for me in preparing for this, it was a pleasure really and a treat in some ways to think back over my career with the department. I started in 2000 as an intern and have been with the department since then. And in many ways, looking back on my career, it's been a journey. And I remember back to an intern seminar where one of the instructors said, you know, careers are rarely linear. And I remember at the time thinking, I'm not quite so sure about that, because I had at least my career figured out 3 steps out. You know, I figured I was going to do my internship, complete that at CMHC and also Consultation Center. I actually see Nadia. It's wonderful to see Nadia, who was one of my mentors and supervisors when I was at Consultation Center. But my thinking was, I was going to continue with my internship, and then I was going to apply for a postdoc at the Boston Multicultural Center for Training in Psychology, and then I would go on and stay either at Boston or maybe join the faculty at Harvard. And I have to say, thankfully, thankfully, Larry Davison offered me a postdoc at Perch, and Perch became my academic and professional home for a majority of my career. I'm currently on leave from Yale to assume the role of commissioner, but it's been wonderful just to be part of the department and to be part of the team at Perch. And so preparing for this, again, thinking back on all of my time, it's just been wonderful to think about the many people who have shared bits of wisdom and advice and support and mentorship. And so I have felt fortunate and blessed really throughout my career here. So we've been asked to think about 5 questions, and I'll go through each of those. The first is to talk about my journey with the department. And again, as I talked about, it definitely has not felt linear. But that's been exciting, and over the years I've really tried to be open and receptive to that, to the different opportunities and experiences that presented themselves, and to think about those as they align with my interests and passions. And that's something, mentorship is so important, because that's something I felt that Larry and certainly the philosophy at Perch was very much about. It's about, follow your passions, follow that what you're interested in, and everything else will fall into place in terms of the faculty trajectory. And so I embraced that. And have had wonderful opportunities and experiences both at Perch and throughout the department as well. So I'll quickly go through my career, and interest has always been sort of the intersection of sort of research, policy, also working at multiple levels, sort of research, policy, and behavioral health services, but also working at state, local, and national levels, and working specifically on health equity and recovery-oriented care and service system development with certainly an eye towards quality. So it's a mouthful, but in terms of how some of that has broken down, I've always been interested in sort of multi-system approaches, again, developing recovery-oriented and culture-responsive systems of care, organizational and system change, policy development, service system design, both qualitative and quantitative approaches. And then in terms of some of my positions, so again, I did my internship in 2000 at CMHC and Consultation Center. Tom Styron was my primary advisor at the time, and again, worked with Nadia, and it was a wonderful experience, and that's by and large why I stayed. It's largely why I stayed. I felt I had just great opportunities to try out different things. I mean, I remember as an intern, I think mentioning to Tom that I was interested in drumming and the ways in which drumming could be used to impact behavioral health. And next thing you know, I was doing a drum circle at Fellowship Place with some of the clients there, many of whom were seen here at CMHC. And that was a wonderful experience to be able to incorporate that alternative approach into traditional treatment. And so my internship, it was a great experience, and so I opted to stay. And I started then at Perch, and that became my professional home. Larry Davison was one of my supervisors. And so from 2001 to about 2012, I assumed various faculty positions: instructor, assistant clinical professor, assistant professor. And at that time, I also started my work at DEMAS, so the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, where I consulted with the Office of Multicultural Affairs, which is now the Office of Multicultural Healthcare Quality, and later became the director of that office. So again, that's from 2002 to 2012. But then also, because of my interest in national work, kept an ongoing sort of relationship and did consultation at SAMHSA, and was a consultant for the PATH program and did cultural competence training and consultation at the national level. So it was exciting to be able to move across those three areas: the local, the state, and the federal perspectives. In terms of opportunities, it was a wonderful opportunity to be here with the department. In all the years that I was here, Perch was largely a pretty diverse group, and it was predominantly female. So I often felt that was a wonderful space for us to be able to sort of think through and unpack some of the opportunities, but maybe even some of the challenges that we experienced either at some of the places that we were consulting, or through the department, or in some instances at DEMAS. And so that was a great opportunity to talk through and think through some of those microaggressions. Or for me, some of my experiences as an African American woman and female doing work looking at health disparities and health equity. It was a great place to be able to talk through times when I felt that work was well received or not well received, and how we could help to grow the choir, grow the people that believed in the mission and the work that we were sort of focused on. And so that felt like just a wonderful professional home and place to be able to do some of that work. I had the opportunity to quickly become part of the Perch leadership, and so we, on an ongoing basis, talked about the mission and vision and strategy and approach to the work. I got to co-lead a group at Perch, which was wonderful, where we sort of looked at our own internal organizational climate. Felt it was important not only to sort of consult about the work, about being culture responsive and recovery oriented, and to pay attention to microaggressions and those sorts of things, but also to walk the walk in our space. And so I felt valued to be able to have the opportunity to co-lead a group where we looked at those issues internally on an ongoing basis. And it was an opportunity to try out different either in some instances with strategies or procedures that I was using with in some instances other states, or here or with DEMAS. So there were lots of opportunities from that perspective. And through the DEMAS-Yale partnership, that was a great, I feel, opportunity for me to be able to really get into policy and ways in which policy can impact system change and improve our system of care here in Connecticut. And it's interesting, I remember initially, right after it was probably midway through my internship, going out to lunch with Arthur Evans, who was then the deputy commissioner of DEMAS, and he was also on faculty here at Yale. And he asked, well, what are your interests in terms of your postdoc? Are you interested in policy? Are you? And I remember I didn't quite have a good sense of really what policy was about at that time. So again, this was right after my internship, and that sort of was a pivotal moment for me, because I then really wanted to be more sort of connected and involved in policy work and system change, and as it relates to multicultural issues and creating recovery-oriented systems of care. And I think largely because of that and my own interests, I stayed on with DEMAS from 2001, all the way through 2012. And it was great at Perch. We had a core contract with Themis where we were doing quite a bit of work. I also had opportunities to connect with international groups. So at Perch, there were always international groups visiting. And so it was an opportunity to sort of share my voice and my interests in cultural issues and system change related to multicultural work with people who came and visited often from France, China, Brazil, Norway, Australia. And it was wonderful to be able to do that. And then also to myself participated in a couple of projects related to community health in Ghana, Gambia, Senegal, and Kenya. And so that felt like a wonderful opportunity. Oh, 5 minutes. Okay, I got to move. Okay. See what happens? Anyway, okay. You get in the zone and then, okay, so challenges. It wasn't all rosy. There were definitely challenges. It's hard. It was hard. It was hard from many different perspectives. One challenge was just balancing personal life and work. Academic life is, I have been in many discussions where we talk about how it can be boundaryless, that you can always be working on a grant or a contract or something. And so I remember some evenings, thinking, oh my gosh, I would so much rather be doing something else, but, I had a grant to be working on. And it was always about that, about the sort of certainly, needing to be focused and get the things done that needed to be done, like get the grant in or, get that last little part on an article done. But it was always I felt like I was always focused on trying to strike that balance. And thankfully, I was in a space where we talked a lot about play, where that was sort of honored, and we encouraged each other. So there was a lot of peer mentoring in addition to sort of mentoring through Larry, my primary mentor, but a lot of peer mentoring. Like we would encourage each other. Look, it is time to step back. It is time to take a break, and so it was helpful to do that. But that has always been an ongoing challenge, balancing my work and professional life. I'll talk about this a bit later. Actually, since I have 5 minutes, I'll do it now. So I got married when I was 40, and so that was 2007. Yeah, 7. I guess don't tell my husband. I'll be anyway. But so. This is something we paid attention to. So we decided at one point, let's just get a small RV. Let's just get a small camper, and that's how we're going to spend our weekends. And one year we got kayaks, and so we would commit to certain things that we knew if we paid for them or if we signed up for them. I took pottery classes, photography, which I'm still doing the photography. So that often helped with the balance. But there were other challenges. It was hard. For me to leave Yale and do the placement I did in DC with SAMHSA. So I was invited by the White House to do a White House appointment at SAMHSA as a senior policy advisor to the administrator. I was just appointed to the director of the Office of Multicultural Affairs at Demas, and I loved that job because I'd been consulting with Demas now up to almost 11 years. So the director retired, and then I was appointed in that role, and then got this opportunity, which I was not expecting. Although I did technically sort of put my name in the hat for it. I say technically only in that. So after President Obama won the election, there was one talk where he said, "Look, we want your ideas, we want your resumes, the administration is open," and I was just so excited that he won. I remember one night watching American Idol with my husband and sitting at the computer and just sending my resume and with a note saying, I'm interested in health equity, and I think I'd be a good fit for SAMHSA, and these are some things, and I pushed send. And I don't even think I told anyone about it. Maybe 2 people at Perch the next day. You're not going to believe what I did. And I forgot about it. But then about 2 years later, I got the email from the White House and decided to take that. But it's so helpful to have relationships and people that can help you think through some of those challenges. And I felt like I had that end of the department. I see Sam Ball in the back who helped with just putting together the materials. I was at SAMHSA 2 years, but then had to extend my academic leave another a bit of time because I wasn't quite ready to come back. And Mike Ciernak helped. I mean, Bob Cole, there's so much help in terms of just sort of figuring that out, how to remain on ladder track, but then do a 2-year leave and then extend the leave a little bit. And so I was appreciative of that. Okay, I got 1 minute. So I guess it's lessons learned. I think it's just wonderful and important to build a network of support. Mentors and supporters can come in all different sort of, all different ways. And so it was helpful for me, and I certainly encourage others to have a wide network of people who are your tribe, who you can sort of go to and talk through things with and think through things or vent if you have to vent, if you experience a microaggression or something else that doesn't land right. That was always important. Also, follow your interests and passions. It sounds so much like a cliche, but it truly has helped for me. If you follow your interests and passions, everything else will sort of fall into place in many ways. And then I'll just end on that it's true, like careers are rarely linear. Mine in terms of the traditional, I don't know I think everyone's journey is probably different, so I can just speak for myself. It hasn't been linear, but it's been a wonderful sort of journey, and I've appreciated the support that I've gotten from the department. I am technically on leave, and I guess on a pause in terms of ladder track again, and I think I'm adjunct now. But it's wonderful to still have that connection with the department. Technically now through DEMIS, we have quite a bit of a robust partnership with Yale, and so it's been exciting to still be able to be connected. And I still get to work with Larry because he's on my executive team, and so I'm on leave from Yale, but it's been wonderful to feel connected as well. So thank you.
So, good morning, and thank you for inviting me. It's an honor. Stay closer. Okay. So I start with challenges. You speak English. I speak in English.
We can't hear you back here.
Okay? Yeah, so that's fine. This is a quote from an analyst actor who studies the immigration process. I am an immigrant woman whose first language is not English and whose medical school was abroad. And by my own decision, when I decided to come, I lost my country, my culture, my language, and connections, and I am here. Becoming licensed to practice, when you are from a medical school abroad, you have to take examinations, and I passed them, and then I completed my residency here at Yale. And then I had to compete with colleagues who did not have any trouble speaking or writing in English. And they were validated constantly. They have mentors who look like them. I had support, but no Hispanic faculty members were at that point. I thought that once I graduated, it would become easier, and indeed it was. I work in community psychiatry, and I really enjoyed developing programs for serious mentally ill. And the salary was give me some comfort to come home early to be with my children by the time they came from school. But ultimately, I was actually committed to come back as faculty, and so I did. And that was a major challenge. First, I took a salary cut. That was half of what I was making. God bless my husband. And I thought this was normal. And I didn't realize back then that males were consistently paid more than women. I didn't even challenge any of that, nor I thought that I could have. And then over the years, I thought I was doing very well. because they kept raising my salary. And I think it was because the institution was trying to make up for the disparity that has been going on for many years that Cindy showed us today. So through the time I was battling differences in culture, my culture is that of humility. You don't aggrandize yourself. It's a virtue to be humble. It seems that the dominant culture is be loud, speak, be ahead, and then you make it. But no, not me. And but I felt obligated to try some of that because I wanted to advocate for the groups, minorities and immigrants and women. And also my culture goes against the medical school culture, which is that of making yourself famous. And so they want also, obviously, to produce papers that are in best quality journals, and they don't really they don't account for me taking care of children or elderly parents, and intersectionality was not part of the deal. So in terms of my personal development, so over time I have benefited from psychiatric training, from psychoanalysis, from psychoanalytic training, from my mentors here and across the United States, from the CMHC administration, the National Institute of Health, and obviously my husband and family support. And then the challenges became advantages. So being bilingual and bicultural now was an opportunity. And so first I became interested in mental health services, starting with adherence studies, and then in focusing on the Hispanic services and the need for developing programs. And well, another challenge was that I was not a Puerto Rican. All Hispanics are not the same. But charm and collaborations and good, honest interest in improving the services of the Hispanic community broke barriers and brought us together. Remember Tomas Reyes, Bob Cole. As an educator, I was asked to develop a cultural competence program and for the residents. But competence is not, it doesn't sit well for me because culture is fluid, and so I call it cultural psychiatry. And I also wanted the residents to have training in bias, prejudices, and also learned about health outcomes and disparities and how those biases and disparities, how the biases can produce disparities and how we can avoid them. And I also, through skills, I used the outline of the cultural formulation, which, by the way, was in the DSM-4 since 1994, but nobody seemed to notice. And I used that as a framework for interviewing. And then when the revision of the DSM-5 started, they invited us to become part of the feasibility trials, and we developed the CF5, and we published that in a Spanish version too. So it's about understanding what caused the illness. This is from Kleiman, from ethnography. Understanding the person behind the illness. This is from John Strauss. Understanding what helps that person, what supports they have had. Really understanding what is that they make from and using their own supports. Also about structures and what kind of community barriers they have. And so now we work on trying to make recovery part of the Latino programming, which is actually very scarce. And we're trying to teach medical students. Now we have a sub-internship in the Hispanic clinic, and hopefully to psychiatrists in the state. So what are some of the lessons learned? If your first language is not English, get an editor. And yeah, I remember Howard Sonana at some point. He was was writing a grant, and he got me an editor, and I was really benefited from that, and I learned from that experience. That was a grant that it was actually, I got the grant from NIH. So I choose your commitments, time commitments wisely, and connections and collaborations are crucial. Networking even outside your field. Be aware of who is going to evaluate you. So in the medical school, they have faculty who work in labs, maybe researchers who don't see patients, may not be clinicians. And so you have to network and you have to participate in committees and to make sure that you're known, they know you, and you also get to know them and learn from them too. Also, find a spot where you are supported and that you get support for your projects. I'm privileged to have support from the Hispanic Clinic and the Latino Behavioral Health System and the residency program and the department. And so I'm proud to have support for the residency training. And my hope is that to develop residents to be the best they can be, and that they look at my actions rather than what I say or write. At the end of the day, being a faculty member is hard. And why do I keep facing these challenges? Well, as you know, psychiatrists are very scarce, and Hispanic psychiatrists are really very scarce. Only 34% of women are of psychiatrists are women, and Hispanic psychiatrists are a lot less, 1,400 in the whole country, and women, about Hispanic women psychiatrists about 470, so we are rare. Over time, I have learned to turn what I used to be as challenges into opportunities, and as a woman, mother, educator, I have all these have become foundational strengths for the work that I do. And if you do what you love, you succeed. And so developing mental health services for Hispanics has been a great thing for me. And contributing to the training of bilingual, bicultural professionals, not only in medicine or psychiatry, but also in social work, nursing, and other disciplines. It's a source of pride for me, and considering their scarcity, I think the contribution is more worth it to me. I am grateful to, and I have to mention names, I have to. Al Selnit, Sam Ridbo, Rosemary Balsam, John Strauss, Scott Woods, Bob Rosenhack, Howard Sanana, Larry Davison, Bob Rorba, Gene Steiner, Michael Cerniak, Bob Cole, John Crystal. I know I'm missing many people. My collaborators and peers at the Hispanic Clinic, Luis Añez, Hector Liscano, Michelle Silva, Manuel Perez, and my husband Juan Diaz, and sons Dave and Andres. Thank you.
Woo, that was awesome. Okay. So full disclosure, guys, I am going to go off script from what, and people who know me know that I usually go off script, but I had taken some time to really write down some notes, and then life happened. And I said, you know what? I'm going to just talk and be me, right? I'm gonna mind time, because I like to be on time, so I'm gonna mind time. I actually am gonna, I was thinking in my head, I'm gonna start from the beginning of like why I could care less about New Haven and definitely Yale, because I was in New York City, and I was like, what? Why would I go to Connecticut? But I'm gonna start at the end, because I think that for me, it really exemplifies why I am here and why I plan to stick around. So I've had a hell of a year, and Kathy Carroll, I'm so happy she's here. I was like, I hope she's coming. I asked Brian, is Kathy coming? And I know she has a grant due Monday, and she showed up. She showed up. She showed up for me. So thank you, Kathy, for being here. But this has been a hell of a year, y'all. So, okay. I just bought a house, and I was like, oh my gosh, my house is wonderful. I'm gonna be in New Haven or Hamden. I haven't quite accepted I'm in the suburbs a little bit. And I had this amazing housewarming. It was Wakanda Forever, a celebration of the African diaspora. And I said, I am gonna bring my Black self to Hamden unapologetically because that's who I am, right? And everybody came and was like dressed to the T, and we had a great time, right? My whole family was there, the department was there, John Crystal and his wife. I'm like, get it, you guys were there. We had a wonderful time. And then 2 weeks later, I was home and I got a phone call. Long story short, my dad had a massive stroke. And I think about, who am I, right? Who am I? Professionally, I think of myself as a leader, right? I'm a mover and shaker. I've always been that. I'm an advocate for Black people, right? My patients, trainees. I'm a clinician, like I am a great psychiatrist. I know that to be true. I spend time with my patients. You know, I often think, I want to be the doctor who I would want to doctor my family. I might not be great with documentation, but at the end of the day, my patients show up, you know? My clinic is full because I'm a damn good doctor, and I'm not going to apologize for that. I'm a researcher. I think of myself as like a community researcher. Thank God there's a title now, Community Engaged Research, okay? And I'm an educator. But all of that put to the side, I'm a daughter, you know? I'm a sister, I'm an auntie. And when I got that call, you know, me and my dad are like super close. I was out of here, you know? It's hard to get from New Haven to Pittsburgh, okay? I was not in a good place to drive, so I had to take a flight. It was $1,000. I'm like, damn it, you know, what am I gonna do? Anyway, I was gone. I didn't think twice about it. The point is, and why I'm being very transparent is, when I got to Pittsburgh, I sent an email to Kathy, to Mike Zerniak, to people that I needed to like make sure they would know that I just was gone for a while. And Mike said, Ayanna, do what you have to do. We are okay. Kathy said, because I was in the middle of piloting my project in the community, she said, we'll take care of it. Like, you're okay. And for me, that's why I'm here. I didn't have the foresight to know when I was first interviewing after I finished the MD PhD program that was the type of support that I would need. But that's why I'm here, okay? So that's real life. That's why I'm here. And I'm just so happy that Yale showed up for me when life is real, okay? I'll start there. It wasn't, like I said, I didn't have the foresight to see that when I first came. I was young. I had just really embraced my natural hair, had a fly style that the Africans in New York braided on 125th Street. And I said, you know what? Like, this is who I am, and if Yale can't get with it, then oh well, it's their loss. And I remember walking into the interview room, and I'm like, what? Why are all these white men hanging up? Like, I don't belong here, you know? And my interviews, I remember Michael Block interviewed me, Steve Southwick interviewed me, and Bob Rohrbaugh, and I'm like, They don't have any token person they can just like stick in and interview me? Like, come on, like, it was clear. I'm dedicated to health disparities in my application. I'm like, this is not going well. But then I never shared this with you. Esperanza was my last interviewer. She was so kind. And we had just a wonderful conversation and talked about what it is to be female, what it is to be minority at a place like Yale. And I said, you know what? There's a reason why she's here. And that made me want to learn a little bit more. I wasn't quite sold, okay? But it made me want to learn a little bit more. I'll say all that to say that representation matters. And one of the challenges for me being here, despite the enormous support, is that there are no black full professors. That's a problem for me, you know? And so what can I do? I often think, what can I do to make sure that that doesn't continue to happen? It's 2018, we can do better, okay? And so had it not been for, Esperanza, I wouldn't have even thought to want to learn more about Yale, right? And so I'm glad that at least our department is serious in taking that feedback. We took the pictures down. We have a committee now that's being more deliberate and thoughtful about what's on the walls because that makes a difference, okay? Another thing I was going to say, and I forgot that quickly, but I think we have, in terms of challenges, specifically females, we haven't quite, as a department, figured out how to really deal with sexual harassment, and then also I say harassment by race. I've been called, people notice I share this story, I've been called a black bitch when I'm trying to take care of patients, not having any support from people who were at the time my attendings, my colleagues, just being silenced, that's not okay. Being very nervous given to have to present a presentation and a male colleague saying, I like the way your butt looks in that skirt, okay? What do you do with that as a young person who's trying to start off their academic career? Not knowing if you should report, should you not report, not wanting to cause any trouble, you know? People know here I was called a token nigger bitch. And again, we've talked about that, but not having a system to really adequately respond. That gets old. I have the same challenges as everybody else. Like, I'm trying to do my best, but that hurts. And you get sick of it. So I'm excited to hear about the effects of racial trauma, because that's real. When I, and I'm not going to get into the details of what I've done. I mean, we can talk about that in Q&A. But when I was thinking about, should I go to University of Pittsburgh, really, because that's where I'm from, UPMC, or should I stay at Yale? What did it for me is that I had to reflect on, again, all of the people that supported me. And, you know, again, John Crystal, we had a relationship at that point, you know? It's important to know your chair, if I had to give advice. And I mean, we weren't friends at that time, but I had a relationship, and he showed me that he felt it was important for me to be here. And so when I had a conversation with the chair of Pittsburgh, he didn't know me. And the conversation that we had was basically, in order for me to make you an assistant professor, you need to show me that you have value. And I wasn't willing to do that. Inherently, I have value because I have value. And really, I was thinking, you don't even have any black psychiatrists in your department. So if you can't even do that, like, I'm out. You know what I mean? So I cannot stress enough how important it is to have support. I have 1 minute, and I actually do have to say names, and I wrote them down because I have some badass mentors. And I need to acknowledge them. And I have mentors and I have sponsors. And mentors are really who I have relationships with, who I meet with often, who I talk about stuff with. And Kathy's at the top of that list. I've had a hell of a year. I've had some really personal, mental and physical health issues that I had to decide, who am I going to share this with and who am I not? And I was able to have some come to Jesus moments and talks and have the support of Kathy. So thank you. Ishmini is awesome. I meet with her. She gives me wonderful advice. She helps me when I'm in California and I don't have anywhere to go. And she says, go and eat at my brother's house. So, thank you. Alan Eden's Esperanza, the social justice and health equity curriculum that we have now is based on her cultural humility and cultural psychiatry course that I got involved in as a second year. So I thank you for that. Sherelle Bellamy, she's not here. I always say, she's over at Perch. I always say she cannot go anywhere until she makes full professor because I need to see somebody who looks like me. It's important. Cindy Crusto, Jean Steiner, thank you for just being amazing mentors. In terms of sponsors, I think about these are the women who have my back, and I'm oftentimes not invited in the room yet because I'm so early in my career. That's Marina. Thank you for recommending me for things when I don't even know if I should do it or not. Rajita Sinha, she came and she said, Rajita, where are you? I saw her, yeah. She's like, we got you. And I'm like, I know she has me, and I appreciate that. Miriam, I told her, thank you when we were in the room with all the bigwigs from the White House who came after the overdose. She recognized me and allowed me to have a platform to talk. So thank you for that. Kiki Kennedy, she just sponsors me for so many different projects, and I'm doing a chapter on the APA because of her. Maria from social work, and Kirsten Wilkins. So thank you so much. And then I will say to females, it's okay to have male mentors and sponsors. Like, they can help. They might not understand what it is to be a woman and caretaker and all these things, but they can be very helpful. So Mike Cerniak, I'm in his office every 2 weeks. And oftentimes I'm like, I'm coming, I'm 5 minutes late, but I'm coming. And we have wonderful talks about life, career, and kind of where I see myself in the department. Larry Davison, thank God for Perch. Every time I walk into Perch, I'm like, ooh, I'm in the community. I'm away from the ivory tower, and that's wonderful. Bob Rohrbaugh, Dave Ross, and Bob Cole. Thank you so much. And finally, John Crystal, you've been an awesome chair. You know, so many times I'm like, should I tell him this? Should I not? And it's like, yes. If anybody needs to know, it's your chair. So thank you for supporting someone like me who's not the traditional academician, but really seeing the value. So I'll stop. I know I went a little over, but thank you.
I'll wait for the people who are leaving to leave the room. Yeah, you cleared the room, Ayana. Thanks, everyone. So, can you hear me? Okay. Those are some great talks, and thank you again for inviting me to speak here. So I don't think I'm going to share any of my personal stories with you. And this is, I've been at Yale a long time, since 1995, and I've had some wonderful mentors. They have been female and male, and including Stephanie and Kathy, and Rajita has been involved in supporting me tremendously, Carolyn Missouri, and male. One who I miss terribly is Bruce, even today, and Richard and John over the years. So I agree with what Ayana just said. Your mentors don't just have to be female if you're a female. You can have great male mentors as well. And we do have some really good male faculty members who will not sexually harass you and who will support you. So please keep that in mind when you're looking for mentors also. I said that as a joke. I know it is a serious issue, but I'm just stating that it doesn't necessarily just have to be a female mentor. As I said, I've always had great mentors, and I started thinking about what was it that I did not have. And I'm just going to address two little things that I did not have. I missed having a mentoring group. I will tell you this, that unfortunately, and I know things are different today, I did not meet with my chair for the first 10 years of my life. So there was no communication. There was no reaching out by the chair to say, how are you doing? I did not know I had to go talk to a chair. So it's not something that was ever conveyed to me, and I never did that. Today we have, I think Marina and a lot of other people have set up mentoring groups, support groups for all junior faculty. I think they are wonderful. And for those of you who are junior faculty and are coming up the rank, please take advantage of those groups. Call Marina if you don't have one, because these panels are wonderful. They tell you not just what to do with your career, but they are also supposed to tell you how to navigate the promotion process. And that is something I had no information on. When I was a junior faculty, the promotion process was a big gray hole. Nobody knew what that was. It seemed like a few select people had these secrets, and you didn't know what the secrets were. So, I think it's much different now. So I do applaud the changes that have taken place. The other thing, which is kind of silly, but I wish that there was more social interactions and opportunities like this to meet with colleagues and faculty members. It's a big joke. Whenever you meet somebody from Yale at a conference, it's like, oh, I haven't seen you all year, and I meet you at this conference every year. And for a little while, it's a joke, it's nice. But it's silly, because we are a great community, and we don't have events like this where we can interact with each other and have conversations, establish collaborations, and I wish we had more of those. And I think we can do more in that regard. I still don't feel we are quite there yet from an improvement perspective. We were asked to comment on personal life, so I'll just very briefly say life is never easy. When you have a career and a family and a child. I am Asian, I'm an immigrant, and when I heard all the wonderful talks here, and I've thought about it a little bit over the years, there are very few Asians in Yale. A little bit more now. Now, mind you, Asia is very big. So there may be people from India, there may be people from China, so don't put us all in the same group, please, because we're really not. But I think that over the years, because of this lack of mentoring and the lack of appropriate colleagues or colleagues who are Asian, I have in many ways suppressed my Asian background. I don't know if there are others in this group, group who would agree with me, but I have never considered the fact, and maybe this is silly and naive on my part, that I'm Asian and somebody has not dealt with me well because I'm an Asian or an immigrant. I don't know why that is the case. Like I said, maybe it's my personality, or maybe it's because I have never really had the support system over the years. But despite all that, I did pretty well. So I have nothing to complain about in that regard. My advice from a personal perspective would be have a good support system, because I did not have a good support system, but I have a wonderful husband. To have a partner who knows not to take offense when he has asked you a question 5 times and your head is buried in the computer because you're trying to draft that perfect sentence, I think that's the kind of support that you really need. Not everybody, or not all of us are blessed to have that, but if you don't, please develop a support system, because I think it's very important. If you don't have somebody you can talk to, somebody who can help you through the tough times, it's difficult to have a career and a family and everything else that you might see a lot of other women having. I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about some lessons that I've learned, and maybe, hopefully, this will serve as advice for some of you who are just starting. And I'll start out with what my lessons learned are. First, I'm going to say learn to speak up. When I was in graduate school, I had a very wonderful chair when I first started graduate school, Dr. Yim, who was from Honolulu. He passed away a few years ago, unfortunately. The first day of graduate school, he called me into his office and he told me, and I'll never forget this, he said, Asian women speak very softly, do not speak up, you have to learn to speak up. I, of course, thought nothing of it back then. And, you know, we did not get offended about things as easily as people do now back then either. I never thought much about it. But over the years, as I used to go to conferences, when you have to network with people, when you are petrified at the idea of approaching somebody, when you're petrified to approach the speaker to ask a question because your heart is racing and your palms are sweaty and you don't know if people are judging you or whether they're going to reject what you're saying, I always kept that in mind. So I would always remember him, channel him, stand up a little straighter, speak a little louder. These are important things. As women, naturally, we have, and not all of us, not me anymore, unfortunately, but we have soft voices, you know, and sometimes that's taken as an indication of being unsure of yourself. And we are not being unsure. We are just, you know, we have a different way of conveying our thoughts, and you really do have to learn to speak up. I'm being told I don't have much time, so I'm just going to move on. The other thing I'm going to say is, like I said, speak up, don't be afraid of voicing your opinions. Never be afraid to try something new. I think one of the things I have learned over the years in my career, and if you look at my CV, you'll see I'm a researcher, but I have done almost every kind of research there is, from qualitative studies to experimental studies to PET studies, neuroimaging studies, fMRI studies. This is a broad range of things. Now, I did this because I had great collaborators, and I want to thank everybody in the room who has collaborated with me. The wonderful thing about Yale, you're in a wonderful institution. The wonderful thing about this place is if you have a question, there is always somebody who can help you answer it. If you have a particular question, you want to use a particular methodology, and you don't know how to do it, don't say, I'm not going to do it. Go find somebody who can help you do it or learn how to do it yourself. I think that is one of the things that has really helped me stay competitive in this field, and probably is reflective of the grant support that I've received over the years. So keep that in mind. It is important to never be afraid to try something new. And the last point I will make, which is if there is something that interests you and you are passionate about, go for it. I am, as many of you know, the chair of the HIC, and I will share with you that when I first started working on the HIC and was asked to vice chair, there are many people in this room who asked me not to do it. They said it was not a smart idea, and it's not something I should take on because it's going to affect the rest of my career, and it's very huge time commitment. And most importantly, and this I really love, because they said that it was considered administrative work. And I never, and still to this day, do not understand this, because I was looking at the primary mission of Yale again, and I quote, it says, improving the world today and for future generations through outstanding research. Mind you, the first word is research, and scholarship, education, presentation. So one would think that the work that I was doing should count towards my career and my promotion, and it did not. But I still did it because I loved it. I just, started doing it. I loved thinking about ethical issues. I loved doing that work, and I said, no, I like this, and I'm going to do it. And it worked out for me. And I'm not going to say it wasn't more work. It was a lot of work, and it still is. But I enjoy every bit of it, and I hope you will find your passion and not hold back. So, start.
It's really just an honor, and I'm humbled to be here with all of you in this absolutely terrific panel. I don't know why I was asked to be here, but it really is kind of amazing. And we have a lot to thank Dr. Crystal and his vision for doing this and making it such a priority in the department, and thank all of the organizers for this. And it's wonderful to hear everybody's experiences, because they're all different, and we all bring something to the table. I worked in the Hispanic clinic with Esperanza. It was just a terrific experience. I had the opposite problem, though. I didn't speak Spanish. So I got my butt down to Central Campus, and I took classes at Yale every day. And then I worked there to try and become more proficient. You know, I listened to some of the presentations in May on the 100 Years of Women, and I was really struck by the trailblazers, the women who were one of 3 in their class, or one of 6, and their stories, which were just kind of amazing and profound. And we don't have that now here, at least in my era. There were, my college, we had a full 36 women in my class at Amherst. Out of 400. And in medical school, out of 100 at PNS, we had almost a quarter of the class that were women. So it's gotten better than 3 or 6, but it's certainly not what it is today. And I think we just have, we have a different struggle and we have different challenges. We're not unicorns anymore, but it doesn't mean that we don't have our challenges. And, you know, it's really hard to top Dr. Missouri when she starts talking about some of the barriers that people confront. But I think she really nicely articulated really one of the challenges now, which is that we're let in the door, but it's a matter of climbing up that ladder without falling off. And I would submit that it's not just an external challenge. You know, we know some of the barriers, some of them have been addressed. You know, now you get an extra year on the clock if you have a child. That wasn't the case when I was here. Now we have a whole host of things that can potentially help people with the mentoring committees and things like that. But we still see people falling off the ladder. And I would say that that's also an internal struggle for us. And it's really an internal struggle because of the culture we grew up in and the things we really want. I had my children when I was 40, and I came to Yale 3 months after that, came to Penn 3 months of that. So I started working at Yale when my kids were 6 months old, and I had 3 of them. And I commuted an hour each way, and I didn't sleep much. I used to sit, one of my mentors was Bob Rosenheck. I don't know if Bob's here, but I would sit in his office. Are you here, Bob? No. I would sit in his office and look down at my socks, which wouldn't match. And I would say, I don't usually look like this. Bless his heart, Bob's didn't even notice. What are you talking about? So it was very, very tough. And I think I had a lot of the struggles that we see now, you know, where people are falling off the ladder. Like, why don't I take a part-time job and then I can be at home and I don't have to have this commute and I don't have to find a place to use a breast pump. And let me tell you, there are no bathrooms with outlets that you can use a breast pump in at Yale. It was a real challenge. There's still structural barriers, right?
Yeah. So I think, but I think we have to deal with that both internally and externally. You know, we need to do whatever we can to sort of address the external part, but we also need to address that internal part. You know, fortunately, I met with Steve Money. Oh, another thing about coming to Yale from UT Southwestern was, what is the deal with people don't use their first names? It's an initial and then their middle name is the first name. And I said, shortly after I got here, I was like, I can't call anybody by their first name because I don't know what they use. So anyway, I thought of Dr. Buddy because of that. I don't know how many times I incorrectly referred to him.
But, so I asked him if I could go part-time. And his response was, oh, of course, but you can't be ladder track faculty anymore. But then we made a secret pact that I could work one day a week from home and not drive in, but I couldn't tell anybody. And I'm sitting there thinking, who am I going to tell? Nobody even knows what I do. So anyway, it worked out. He was supportive. It worked out in the end. And then fortunately, I was pretty successful and got 3 grants in a row. And then nobody really, other than people working on the projects, knew what I was doing, and I didn't really have to be anywhere other than the consult service for one day a week. But being a researcher actually was really nice. It allowed me to really not have anybody, like I could be up at midnight writing manuscripts and other grants and things like that, and I could be in the classroom at 9 o'clock for an hour and then, you know, do what I wanted to do. So there was that flexibility, and it was really, really fortunate to my career. But it's getting to that spot, and then that next level that really is so tough. Carolyn and I were office mates when I first came here, and she saw firsthand, A, the babies, and B, the not matching socks. And it was really very instrumental, actually, in having one of my first internal grants here at Yale. It really helped a lot. So, you know, we need to help each other, and we need to help each other not just structurally, but help each other internally. We need to reach out and mentor people. It's not important to have your name first on a paper. You can be in the middle, you can be last, especially if you've been here for, you know, a dozen years and you're widely acknowledged. We need to help our colleagues make that next step. One of the things I've really been struck with in the Doris Duke Foundation, or Fund to Retain Scientists, though, and they don't say female scientists, that's just sort of under the radar, is actually meant to apply also, is how many women articulate that struggle, that they need to be doing some procedure at 9 o'clock or 8:30 in the morning, but they have to get their kids off to school, and their husband can't do it because he's a blah, 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 you know? And I had that, I mean, with 3 kids, you might imagine, you know, there were times that we needed at least 2 drivers, and it was the nanny and me. It was never my husband, because he had the important job, so, you know. And he does have a really important job, and I get it, even though he thinks I don't get it, so. But, you know, to reach out and figure out ways that we can, you know, give somebody a lift as they're struggling at that end of the ladder. And, you know, sometimes it's what everybody experiences, and sometimes it's really what we as women particularly experience. So that's my story, and I'm going to say this now.
Thank you to our panelists with their incredible stories and very powerful messages. We have been receiving some questions online. One of the cards was already handed down. In the interest of time, we're not going to be able, unfortunately, to take everyone's questions, but Jessica's going to read one of the online submissions, and then Natalie has one from a card, and then Dr. Petrakis will make some concluding remarks, and then hopefully we'll all get to W12 for more discussion. So,
Sure. So this question is for the panel in general, and we'll have a few of you answer. I'm fairly early in my career. I'm inspired by these stories and also demoralized by the numbers Dr. Krusto presented. I feel like I could have a much easier life in private practice. Why should I stay? Any takers?
Oh, gosh. Well, you know, it is the case, I mean, I don't know if this person, maybe it doesn't matter, but it was the case that you could do a lot better in private practice than actually in an institution such as our department. But actually, our salaries have gotten a lot better, so that can really help. And you can find flexibility, like as I was just saying, but I think one of the things that why should I stay? do you want to be in your office alone and seeing patients like 6 hours a day? Or would you rather be working with colleagues, whether it's on a clinical service or on a grant or something like that? You really have to kind of decide that. I think the university is moving toward greater flexibility in a lot of ways, and we hope to see it continue to do that. And plus, it's really fun to see your name in print. So those are some of, but I think you do get a lot of support if you're at an institution. You just have to kind of figure out the way to go. And with our new mentoring committees and things like that, I think it can be really helpful. But other reasons to stay?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it really, for me, it depends on really what are your values. I mean, if you, doing this work is very difficult. So if it doesn't match with what you really want to do, don't do it, because it's tough, right? And so for me, I think about, why do I want to be a part of the academy? Why am I here? And for me, it really is important for young people to see that Black women can do this. And there's a place and there's a voice, and we can advocate for one another. And then also just making sure that science is more equitable. And so we can figure out a way to treat all people, no matter what they look like or where they come from. So that supersedes being able to do academia versus private practice, because I won't really be able to change or advance those who receive services if I'm plugging away in my office, right? That's not advancing science or advancing what resources are available for all people. So I do think it depends on, you really have to think, what are your values? And if the work is not consistent with your values, don't do it. It has to be something that you're committed to.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that if you find what you like to work on, you will find support here. It doesn't matter if it's male or female, but the support is wonderful. And there are people who have really a commitment to make women famous.
So we'll just do the one last question, so then Drs. Manny Petrakis can come up for closing, for the closing statement. So what is the most helpful thing that a senior female colleague has done for you? If anyone would like to respond.
Everybody's more senior than me, so I'll I'll respond quickly and then give it other. But I really think it's really just giving me opportunities, even when I'm not deserving of them, and being open and honest about what it's going to take, and supporting me, like I said, despite not being at a place where I have a lot of papers or things like that, but still seeing the value in supporting me. Back to what Dr. Yonkers was saying, really having people in your corner who are willing to give you the chance, because they're at the height of their career.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, I feel fortunate that I had a senior colleague, Esperanza, really make space for me and invite me to collaborate and to work together. And so our meetings were always so valuable. And so I think that is important, sort of making space and sort of reaching out to other colleagues, because the collaboration is so important.
I would say the same, opportunities, and more importantly, having somebody you can vet ideas by, somebody you can speak to, somebody who you can present something, and somebody who's knows to tell you whether if it's a stupid idea and say no, don't go there. I think that's the most important.
I think we have to have a shout out to Dr. Missouri, who has really put women's health on the map at Yale and has been a trailblazer. She also adopted me into a tiny little space when I first came here, which had a plug for a breast pump. But, you know, Dr. Missouri has really made it her focus to see that women are engaged and succeed. So, she gave me a helping hand when I needed it, and so I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So we're going to invite Drs. Maney Petrakis up for the closing remarks.
Thank you very much. This has been really wonderful, and I do realize I'm between you and lunch, so I will try to be quick. I do have to pile on my thank yous, though, today. To the speakers, first of all, to Dr. Crystal, who set the stage and for this department. As you heard, he's been a mentor for many people, including women and including me, and his support is very appreciated for this grand round, so thank you. Dr. Missouri has been a role model and mentor for many women as well, and men, and she's had very senior leadership roles, not just in our department, but in the medical school at large. So she graciously shared with us her experience, and she highlighted both the opportunities and challenges of academic life at Yale. Jean Steiner is a wonderful moderator, that's obvious to all, but what you don't maybe know is all the work she did behind the scenes, choreographing this event, adding special touches like the flowers, so I just want to thank her for that. Thank you to the Diversity Chief Residents who moderated this and brought enthusiasm, energy, and perspective to this event. To the panel members, I really want to thank you. The stories were poignant, they were funny, they were sad. We appreciate your willingness to tell us personal stories, to share your journey with us. And I think it's very interesting that they represent a diversity of roles in the department, stages in their career, their social backgrounds, and this has been really great. So I think we should give them a round of applause. So I also want to say a special thanks to Cindy Crusto, who really worked tirelessly to organize this. She thought about everything, how to have a diverse panel, who to ask, and she, as she kind of hinted, she fielded lots of calls with helpful suggestions and maybe not so helpful suggestions. Anyway, she's done a great job. I consider her a great colleague and a friend, and I think she deserves a round of applause for this. So I'm just going to say a very, very few words. There were some interesting themes from the talks, and they overlapped, and I just wanted to tell you what my thoughts were. First of all, your career path can take some really unexpected turns, and sometimes a helping hand or an opportunity will come out of the blue, and it's not what you expected. That was true for my case, and it's true for some of the panelists here. And I think for the younger people, you may see something and you're not sure what to do, but sometimes it can be really a great opportunity. There's a lot of talk about the struggle of work-life balance, and that is something that everybody struggles with. Women perhaps more so, but maybe not. Men struggle with it as well. You hear that there are still challenges that we face, and there have been some pretty, and not all the challenges are the same for all the people, and so that is something to keep in mind, that things that I experienced may be different than what my neighbor did, and that's important in terms of going forward. You heard some advice that I think is very helpful. It's very important to have support, and that support can come from different places. We've heard about peer support, colleague support, mentor support, family support, and that really is what gets you through the day. We heard about the importance of networking, the importance of role models and representation, which our department still has to work on. We heard that there's a need or a role for more social interactions, which can be departmental, but they can also be done by people individually. And I think one of the most important things we've heard several times is you have to do what you like. If you don't like it, you're going to be miserable, and you have to like it. And so to the person who asked about private practice versus academic, and I think some of the panelists said it as well, you really have to like what you do. And if you don't like writing papers, you probably don't want to be in an academic track that requires you to write papers. If you don't like being in an office all day long, like Dr. Yonkers apparently doesn't want to be alone with the patient all day long, 6 hours a day, you shouldn't do that, and you really have to find what you like. It was really great to hear from women who've already achieved a lot in their career, and hopefully their stories will help the younger people in the audience in terms of their advice. It's not all the same for everybody. I also want to say, though, I really appreciate working with younger women as well, who are trainees, who are junior faculty members, because they often bring a different perspective than the one I had, and that keeps me going, and I think that they have a lot to offer us, those of us who are already established in a career. I also want to thank the men who showed up in the audience. I was hoping there would be a few more, but I see men out there, and I want to thank you for attending. I want to thank you if you have supported women in your career. We heard several mentors mentioned, or if you're supporting a woman in your life, like my husband who supports me. And we benefit from having you in the room when we have these discussions, so thank you. Now, as Cindy mentioned, the celebration is not ending today. First of all, there's lunch up in room W212, so we invite all of you to come. But I also want to encourage you to come to some of the other events that are planned throughout the year, to keep a lookout for the newsletter that's going to celebrate women in our department, because as she mentioned before, it's a year-long celebration. It's not just 2 hours. And so that's it. Thank you all for coming.